Hello,
Hello.
everybody. Hello, girls.
Hello. Hello.
Okay,
Good morning.
okay, back up, Caleb. So Josh, and let Josh go in and look. And Caleb, get out of the way and let. Quick.
Hello. Now.
Okay.
Good morning.
When everyone. Back
Everybody can
up.
wave. There you go. A whole bunch of waves. Yay.
Okay. That's
What's
not-
your name?
No, stop. Don't point him.
We're going to start the service soon, everybody. Just 1 minute. Keith, are you ready soon?
Hello,
Hi, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. I'm going to mute myself and let you go here. 1 second.
Okay. Good morning and welcome to worship on this beautiful Sunday morning. It's a gorgeous day. It's the second Sunday.
Now we can talk.
A Sunday that, in ancient tradition was called Holy Humor Sunday, and something we've been practicing a bit the last few years. I had, in my announcement, said that I would tell you some Bill Thomas stories because Bill called me up a couple of days ago and gave me a few stories to share with you. Bill Thompson, yes.
Yes, hero.
Thompson. So Bill shared some stories with me, and I thought I would share them with you. I think
Keith?
he said was about a fella who received somebody knocking on his door about 3 o'clock in the morning, and he was quite disturbed and didn't know what to do about it, and finally went down to the door, and there was a man standing there who probably maybe shouldn't, well, it was a good thing he was say. And the fellow said, I need some help, and the guy in the house wasn't very happy, and he closed the door, and he went upstairs, and his wife said, who was that? And he said, I don't know who it was. Somebody looked like he had one too many, and he was standing there, and he told me he needed some help, he needed a push, and it was ridiculous. He said, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, so I came back to bed, and his wife said, well, I remember, not that long ago, we needed some help, and we were stuck in the middle of the intersection, and 3 guys came out of nowhere, and they gave us a push, so maybe you should help that fellow. And he laid there for a while, and he thought about it, his conscience got the better of himself, so he went down there, and he opened the door to see if the fellow was anywhere around, and he yelled out into the darkness, are you still there? And a voice came back, yeah, I'm still here. And he said, do you still need a push? And the guy said, yeah, I do. And he said, where are you? And he said, I'm sitting over here on the swing. I'd have a drum roll if I could. Yes. The other one he wanted to share with me was that there was a priest riding on a bus, and a fellow said he was not looking great, looking like he'd lived a fairly difficult life, and pretty rough and worn around the edges and moving pretty slowly. And the fella looked at the priest and he said, Father, he said, I've got a question for you. He said, it's something that's always bothered me. He said, it's bothering me even more right now. He said, I'd like to know if you could tell me how does a person get arthritis? And the priest was feeling kind of self-righteous that day. He said, well, the way you get it, he said, is through hard living. He said, if you're doing the things that you're not supposed to do, he said, if you're living a wasted life, well, it comes back to you. He said, it has a way of coming around to you. And the fellow said, oh, and that's how you get arthritis. And the priest said, yes, that's how it is. And the fellow said, oh, he said, well, good, he said, because I was just reading this article. It was a bit of a surprise, actually, because the Pope has arthritis. So thank you to Phil for those stories.
Keith.
Yes.
Can you hold the mic closer? Some people are having a hard time hearing.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Better?
No, not really.
Okay, just a sec. Is that close? That's probably better. Is that better?
No.
All right. Is that better?
No.
No, it's not better.
Is everybody's volume turned up?
Okay, just a second.
Everyone turn your volume up on your iPads or computers. That's better because you're right beside it, Keith.
I'm right beside it, yeah.
Yeah.
They did test this out last night.
We did. I'm getting clear. I'm getting clear audio. So I don't know if it's everybody's volume's up. I don't know.
I just don't know how much of it.
While we're waiting on that, who is phoning in from 7402? Who is that?
Joan Mueller.
Hi, Joe, and I'm going to rename you, okay? So we know who's there. Thank you.
Okay.
Or should I turn that up too?
Who's phoning in from 8729? Hello, whose phone number is 743-8729?
Hello, it's Ian Martin.
Ian, okay, thank you very much. I'm going to rename you so we know who's there, okay?
Okay.
Thank you, my friend. Okay.
Alrighty. Any better?
No.
I don't know what to do. I can speak louder. Is that helping?
Is everybody else getting that?
Can people hear me okay?
Bev, can you hear him?
But no, I can't. I can hear you very well, but not.
You can hear me, but not him, okay?
I can hear Keith pretty well.
Thank you, Peter. June, can you hear?
He's got me. No, it's not muted.
Talk right now, Keith.
How about right now? Is that any better?
I can hear fine. Everybody else want to unmute and say yes or no?
Yes, maybe.
No, not really.
No. Yes.
Not at all.
Yes,
Yes.
well enough.
It's a bit echoey, but it's clear.
It's pretty far away. We're gonna fix this next week.
It's a bit better.
It's a bit better. Well,
Mine's fine.
Okay. Everybody else just keep your volume up loud, and Keith, just talk loudly. Can you pull it about 2 feet closer to you?
yeah, just a sec.
Thank you.
How's that? Is that any better?
No.
No, that was worse. Closer
Okay,
to.
well, next week it'll get better. I'm gonna hardwire the thing right into the soundboard.
Can,
So, we should probably begin the service. And hopefully some of it comes through. I apologize for the sound quality. We thought this was actually going to be better. Okay. Our opening call. People of God, did you hear the one about the pianist who tried out for the church musician position? And the people said no.
No.
The chair of the board asked everyone who could pledge an extra 10% to the budget deficit stand.
Oh.
And the piano player played. What happened then? Well, everybody stood up and the pianist got the job. There we go. So as we light Christ's light in the world, let us see the flame take hold and the transformation curl upwards. Let us pray. Spirit of all, gather us in. Help us to know we are yours, especially when we know we cannot possibly respond to your call. God's love tells us that we only need say yes. Love will find the way. So let us join together in our opening hymn. Connie and I will sing. The rest of you, please sing along. You have words, hopefully. If you have the order of service, you'll be on mute, of course, but your neighbors should be able to hear you. we give you thanks. We give you thanks for this created world, for all the joy we find in it, for friends and for neighbors who, together with us, appreciate, love, and live with care in creation, wandering the mountains and the valleys and the rivers and the streams, paddling on the oceans and the lakes. We give thanks for the beauty of creation, and that at this time our lungs are opened up even more, and the skies are clearer, and we can see further than we've seen in a very long time. We can see the delights and the wonders and the joys of your created world. We give you thanks for friends and for neighbors who are responding in unexpected ways. Who would have thought a few months ago that we'd be sewing caps and masks and trying to help one another with grocery drop-offs and assisting in any way we can, and taking time to stop 6 feet away and say hello. We give thanks for those who take the time to ensure that others know that they're not alone in this world, that you are with them, and through us, Christ as well. Loving God, we have friends and neighbors who are close to our hearts right now, folk who are struggling and suffering, and may they know, as we hold them in our hearts, you hold them in your love as well. Loving God, wherever there is trouble and wherever there is torment, you are there, responding in every way that you can, through the loving hands and arms and souls of those who tend to others, and just in the call to creation, the insistence to love that is you. Loving one, we think of friends and neighbors in various places and parts of the world who struggle perhaps even more than we do in our part. May they know that you are with them, that we are with them. May they hear in the words of Jesus' prayer words of assurance and blessing and understanding as we say together the words that Jesus taught us, saying, Our Creator, who is in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who have trespassed against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. And now we're going to switch to a video from Sarah of 4 Children's Time. Have a look at what Sarah has to say about this particular time and some of the ways that we can practice that help us through it.
I'm going to change your screens, folks. 1 second. And
hello everyone, and happy Sunday. Today is April the 19th, which is actually the second Sunday of Easter. I hope you all had a lovely Easter, and maybe you still have some chocolate left. I don't know, maybe not, because I don't. Mine was gone by Monday. But today we're gonna talk about a story in the book of John. And this is when the disciples Jesus has risen from the dead, and the disciples are in a locked room, and the disciple Thomas is not there. And then Jesus shows up, and Thomas doesn't believe. And then 8 days later, Jesus comes back to those disciples in the locked room, and Thomas says, I'll only believe it's Jesus if I see the holes in his hands where the nails were. And the words that Jesus says to those people, his disciples, is, peace be with you. So those are the words that we're going to focus on today. Peace be with you. So I've got a rope here, actually. And when I was a kid, I learned to tie a rope to tie my shoes. And, just like that. And, sometimes you tie these things, and when you're learning to tie them, sometimes they get in knots. You get these knots in it, and it's not very fun. And this kind of reminds me of myself and life, is that there's times when I'll do things that are wrong, or I'm just worried and I've just got stuff running through my head. And it feels like I've been stuck at home for a while, you know, and I'm hoping that my friends and my family are okay, you know, and I've got all these kind of knots. It's like that feeling inside, those knots inside you. But the gospel lesson tells us that Jesus shows up in this locked room, and the disciples are really scared to be locked up in this room. And when Jesus shows up, he has a word that is a gift to them, that is, peace be with you. And I love that idea, because peace be with you are knots. They kind of seem to disappear. When Jesus shares those words of peace be with you, they just disappear. They're gone. We can then share those words with others that we meet. So just take those words, peace be with you this week. And just think of that knot. Think of those knots that sometimes we get inside our head. And just think of our worries and everything. We get knots. But then, peace be with you. They disappear. I hope you all have a good week.
To us laughter. We're going to sing 3 verses and a surprise verse. Laughter, oh source of our life. Laughter can banish so much of our strife. Laughter and love give us fullness and health. Laughter and love are the coin of true wealth. Why do we worry that we will lose face? Why act like Cain for the whole human race? Often in family and often with friends, laughing at Christ causes anguish to bear. Even in sorrow and hours of grief, laughter with tears brings most healing relief. God give us laughter and God give us peace, joys of your presence among us increase. Thanks, Connie. Can you hear me any better if I'm here?
Yes, you're good, Keith.
All right. Well, then I'll just be here. Maybe
Okay.
I'll pick a different backdrop.
That's much
Okay.
better.
How about this?
Yeah, much better volume-wise. Thank you.
Okay. And I'm going to move back a little bit because I'm not sure how I am in the frame of the picture. Is that all right?
You're good in the frame. Just talk loudly.
Okay, I will talk. Oh, geez.
So demanding.
Not very often people ask me to talk loudly. There you go. Quite the opposite, in fact. So today is Holy Humor Sunday, and I have a story that I told a while ago. It still seems kind of pertinent, so I thought I would share the story again, because it's a little pertinent to my experience and to humor and to humans. And so this is a story called The Rabbi and the Pope. I'm sorry you can't stop me if you've heard it before. So a few centuries ago, we're told that there was a big movement in Rome that they wanted all the Jewish people to leave. They just said that they had to go. So the Pope said he was ready to pass a proclamation that said that if you were Jewish, you either had to convert or leave. And this caused great distress amongst the Jewish people and their friends, and they had lots of friends, lots of people who were really distressed by this. So they went to the Pope, and some of the bishops and archbishops and cardinals went to the Pope, and they implored a different solution. So what they came up with was a debate. They decided they would have a debate between the chief rabbi in Rome, who's a very wise man, and the Pope. And if the winner of the debate would determine the outcome. If the Pope won, people would convert or leave. If the rabbi won, they could stay. Well, it seemed fair enough. Jewish people are really good on debates. In fact, when I was there in Israel, they said that that's kind of what they do all the time. If you're ever challenged in a conversation by somebody in Israel, don't take offense. It's just the way things are. People like to challenge. They like the cunning riposte of conversation. The problem in this debate, though, was that the rabbi only spoke Yiddish and the Pope, well, he only spoke Italian. Well, maybe Latin as well. And so they couldn't converse in language. They decided they would have a debate in silence and see how that went. So they sat down across from each other in the big courtyard close to the Vatican, the Pope in his holy throne and the rabbi on a stool, and they had the debate. And so the first thing that happened was the Pope sat in front of the rabbi and held up 3 fingers like this, 3 fingers. And the rabbi looked at the Pope, and he came back with 1 finger, just 1 finger. So the Pope thought about things for a bit, and he took a 1 finger and he waved it around his head like this. And the rabbi, not to be outdone, took his finger and pointed to the ground and stomped his foot on the ground like that. And then the Pope brought out the communion wafer and the wine and brought it in front of him. And the rabbi reached into his little bag that he had beside him and pulled out an apple. And the Pope threw up his hands in disgust and walked away and said, "That's it. I can't deal with this man. He's won." And so when he's meeting with the cardinals and the bishops and the archbishops later on, they said, "What happened?" And he said, "Well, the rabbi he had too many good arguments." He said, I couldn't do a thing. And well, how did it go? He said, "Well, first I hold up 3 fingers to signify the Trinity, and the rabbi puts his hand up and he points with 1, and he says there's but one God for all of us. It came out of the one God." So then I thought, well, one God, yes, but God is all around us. God is everywhere. And the rabbi points to the ground and says, God is right here too. And I thought, well, I brought out the elements of communion to show that we are all forgiven, that Christ brought forgiveness to us, and he brought out an apple to say that there was original sin. And he said, what could I do with an argument like that? I had to leave. And so the rabbi's friends went to the rabbi and they said, "What happened? How did you win?" And the rabbi said, he said, "I just held to my ground." He said, the first thing he did was he held up 3 fingers. Like, we had 3 days to get out of Rome. And I held up my hand and said, "We're not moving." And then he circled his hand around the air and he said, "You people, you're going to get out of here right now." And he said, I pointed to the ground and said, "We stand right here." Well, then what happened? He said, "I don't know what happened." He said he brought out his lunch and I brought mine. It's so much better if you can actually see if there's a reaction. So it reminded me, that story, of a little bit of the deep roots of conflict that are happening where I was visiting in Palestine. And yet there's an innate humor with people wherever you go. It's like you can't live in conflict forever. You can't always do that. I remember speaking with a lawyer who worked for a human rights organization in Ramallah. She's a Palestinian lawyer. And she had been telling us for, I think, about 2 hours of the things that prisoners are going through when they're imprisoned by Israel. And many people are imprisoned just for saying the wrong thing on Facebook. And the total lack of success they were having, and we asked her how they had hope, and she said, "We don't really have hope. We live in despair, but we can't afford to lay down. We can't stop because we're all there is. We can't afford the luxury of total despair," she said. She said, "But when you're telling our stories, don't tell people that we're a depressed, sad people. Tell them we're a depressed, happy people." She said, "Because we still have weddings, and we still dance, and we still enjoy one another's company, and we still get together as families. And we certainly found that when we were there. People enjoyed one another's company. They got together as families. They enjoyed hearing one another's voices. They enjoyed telling jokes in the street, although you couldn't really tell them what they were, except towards the end. Towards the end, the last couple of weeks or so, when we were standing at checkpoint 300, where thousands of people are trying to get through the checkpoint so they can go to their jobs in Israel, we would stand there and people would pass by, and every once in a while one of them would look at us and he would say, "Hey, Corona," and he'd laugh and off he'd go. And then I'd laugh back, and then a few more people would go by and somebody else would say, hey, Corona, and they'd laugh because we were internationals. We were clearly not from there, and internationals were being tagged with spreading Corona. And so they would laugh, and we would laugh, and it was a shared joke until it wasn't, until Corona got to Bethlehem, until COVID-19 became present in one of the hotels. And then when I went for a walk, people said Corona, there was a different kind of tilt to it, a little less humor and a little more, I don't know, threat, maybe implied threat, not to me, but threat they felt to themselves. And then I was walking through a neighborhood in Bethlehem at one point, and two people stopped me, and they couldn't speak English and I couldn't speak Arabic. So they phoned somebody who could speak English, and he talked to me and said they were really concerned that I was in their neighborhood, not that they thought I would be bringing something into it, but that other people might be so filled with fear about this COVID-19 thing that was happening that they would forget who they were and maybe do something to make me leave that wouldn't be pleasant. And so he advised me to go home, and I did. I went home by a more traveled route where people were used to seeing tourists. But thinking about that, about who we are and how we are, that much of the time we are people who like to live in humor and joy and, to take the mickey out of each other. But there are times of deep stress when we don't know who we are and whose we are and who to turn to. Times when we are filled with doubt like Thomas was that morning. And times when we don't know how to verify how the world is to us and where God is with us in our lives. We don't, like Thomas, know because we haven't, like Thomas, seen. And I think in this story, which is told in John's Gospel, there is some message there for all of us. It was written about 100 years after Christ's ascension, and it was written for a people who'd never seen Christ. And so it's on one level a story about a man who did see the resurrected Christ, but on another level it's a story that says, where do you see Christ's wounds today? Where can you put your hand on the wound? And where can you tend to Jesus when he's bleeding, when he's wounded, when he's walking and carrying the wounds of the world? Where can you respond to the wounds of the world? Like the young woman in Ramallah, the lawyers, the people who are going to work every day through Checkpoint 300, like our neighbors that we see as we're walking down the street 6 feet away. Where can we see the wounds? And how can we tend to them? And how do we carry within ourselves that spark of light and laughter and humor that brings us back into relationship not only with God, but with ourselves? Humor, I think at its best, sometimes points out the flaws and weaknesses that we otherwise try and smooth over and says, look, we're just people. That's who we are. We are God's people, but we are people. Let us take a moment to delight in that instead of getting lost in despair. Let us think of that as we pray. Loving God, you send us all kinds of messengers in many ways. We come telling stories with laughter and with solemnity. Help us to respond to the wounded Christ with joy and with laughter and with love on this day and all days. Amen. Now we're going to sing our closing hymn, You Gotta Move When the Spirit Says Move.
When the Spirit says move, you gotta move with the Spirit. Move when the Spirit says move. You gotta praise when the Spirit says praise. You gotta praise when the Spirit says praise. 'Cause when the Spirit says praise, you gotta praise with the Spirit. Praise when the Spirit says praise. You gotta love when the Spirit says love. You gotta love when the Spirit says love. 'Cause when the Spirit says love, you gotta love with the Spirit. Love when the Spirit says love. You gotta laugh when the Spirit says laugh. You gotta laugh when the Spirit says laugh. Because when the Spirit says laugh, you gotta laugh with the Spirit. Laugh when the Spirit says laugh.
Well, may you know yourselves to be a blessed and beloved people. May you know that you are held deep in God's heart, that you are gifted with Christ's grace and the Spirit walks with us every day. May you know this so that through these times you are able to respond to Christ as he walks among us, calling us into relationship, into love and laughter. May you know this on this day and all days. And now let us join together in our Amen.